Welcome, Mandisa Greene. We're really pleased to have you here, President of the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm here in the woods in Croydon. Where are you today?
I'm in the West Midlands in Staffordshire. I'm at home.
Lovely. Well, thanks so much for your time. I've been really looking forward to speaking with you. You're the first Black president of the Royal College in its 176-year history. It's incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And I'd like to get to your role as president shortly. I'd just start hearing a bit more about your beginnings. Did you grow up in the UK or elsewhere?
So thank you. I was born in London, but my parents are both from the Caribbean, and felt when we were at school age that they wanted to, I think, just be around a bit more of a support network. So they were here on their own with friends, but really felt that they needed that kind of family support, wider family support. So they moved us we moved as a family back to Trinidad, which is where my dad's from, and lived right near my granny and my auntie, and so we had lots of people around us and lots of support, and kind of living in a street where everybody knew everybody, and it was very much that kind of environment. So I grew up there. So my formative years were there. I learned to speak there. I went to school there. And when I wanted to go to university, because I always kind of knew I wanted to be a vet, and when I wanted to go to university, my siblings had at that stage, I'm the youngest, my siblings at that stage had returned to England to do their tertiary education. So I followed them and came back to do my tertiary education. Yeah, so I think my connection with animals was really inspired by my mother. She loved animals, and she kind of she rescued animals often. So we would have in our home people.
Do you see there's a bee on my camera?
Yes, I can.
It's a woodland bee.
Oh, wow. These are back. Yeah. So my mom really inspired me in that she would rescue animals, especially kind of people who had unwanted or unexpected litters. She would take them in, so puppies and kittens, and so we always had animals in our household. And I looked after animals from a very early age, and I think she taught me to respect animals and to treat them well and to value them, and my part in looking after them. And really understanding that animals had their own instincts, and my job really wasn't to kind of intervene and kind of be lord over them, but just to make sure that I facilitated their kind of growth and well-being. And so I learned to love animals very early. I think for me, the thing that really bonded me to animals was around my teenage, when I, like every other teenager, had this very angsty teenage years, and I found myself being most at peace when I was with our animals. So when I could go and kind of stroke them, and I used to talk to them and tell them my problems, and they wouldn't give me any opinions. They would just listen and look at me with very, pitiful eyes, like, why aren't you beating me? Why are you talking to me? But it was always a really lovely, relationship, and I really found myself bonded to animals then. So yes, that was my very early exposure to animals.
It sounds really special that there's that nurturing relationship, but also being really aware of what you were getting from the animals.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it was very much, I think I got more from them than they got from me, but I did learn how to care for animals, and how to appreciate that really my role is not to do everything and kind of make sure that everything is in terms of the environment that we were raised in, not to do every single thing for them, but to allow them to use their instincts at time, and just to make sure that their well-being was utmost in my thought process. So yeah.
I can see that level of care very instinctual for you from an early age with animals.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that again, I try now. I have two children, and really try to pass that on to them, and feel, that I have. And so I have kids who, aren't afraid of spiders, and will just take them if they're in the house, take them and gently remove them. And my kids are always trying to save the bees. They're always, because we know how to use nectar, sweet water, to sugar and water to try to revive them. And so my kids are all like, we need some sugar and water to get the bees up. So we've got that kind of all creatures, great and small, in our household. That idea that all animals are valuable, that we all have a place in this universe that we live in, and it's not our place to do anything but to make sure that we respect each other and support each other. And so that was there from an early age for me as well.
Then you came to the UK to study veterinary science. What was that experience like? Were there other Black students on your course, or Black lecturers?
Yeah, so I came to study veterinary science. I went to the University of Edinburgh to do my degree. There were no other Black students on my course. There were other ethnic minority students, so a couple from other ethnic minorities, I'd say. There was one Black lecturer in my preclinical years, and that was it. I think it was an interesting course. I really, really enjoyed it. I think because I wanted to be a vet for so long. I was so determined to get through. So I think that the times that I found it hardest were the times when it was very kind of book-based. But once we got into the bits of it that we call the clinical bits, where you are interacting with the animals and their owners, and monitoring animals and doing things like that, I found that bit so much easier and so much more exciting, and got through that bit, which I think some find harder to get through than others. But I found that bit really, really easy. In terms of the ethnic minorities in there, I think it was interesting, because I don't think myself and the other students who were from different ethnic minority backgrounds, we didn't network together. And so it still very much felt like an isolated experience, because we weren't networked together, so we didn't have shared experiences. So we talked about it quite recently, because I am still friends with them. I probably made better friends with them since we left university. The idea that when we were at university, we didn't really talk to each other and didn't really share these experiences. So everyone kind of felt that they were going through it by themselves. So that was vet school. I find myself being of that age and saying to younger people, you have it so much easier than we did because you have social media. And I know it's hard for every generation. I know every generation will find their own challenges, and it's not easy for this generation, certainly. But what is here now that we did not have is that idea that you can network, and not just network within your own school or across the country, but you can network globally, and you can get the experience of other people who share your experience, so that even though you're going through something that is challenging and something that may be difficult, you know that you're not going through it by yourself. And so it's so comforting, I think, in life to realize that you're not on your own when you're going through stuff, because when you think it's just you, it often feels like, what's wrong with me, or why does it feel like this for me? But when you know that it's something that's shared and it's not just you, I think that brings a sense of comfort that can really motivate you in a way that you can't have if you didn't know that.
Did you go on to specialise in your career as a vet? Are you working with livestock, companion animals, exotics?
Yeah, I stuck to companion animals. So companion animals will be your cats, dogs, rabbits, guinea pigs, hamsters, etc. So any animals that people would have in their homes. And so that's what I have specialised. We can't use the word specialised. It's not specialised. That's what the field that I work in.
Tell us, what does a typical day look like for you when you're working in the practice?
So a typical day in practice is very variable, and I think that's one of the joys of being a vet. No day is the same. You don't go in and kind of know from the get-go what that day is going to look like. So the way I usually explain it, so I start consulting at 9 a.m. on a typical day. I would go into work at 10 to 9, get myself ready, get my computer on and log on, and not know there may be 2 or 3 people waiting to see me. One of them is likely to be an emergency, something that has been seen overnight as an emergency and coming to me for follow-up care, and some are going to be some rather routine things. In that day, I will likely have to prioritize what becomes what I see. So that's one of the key things and skills that I need to have in terms of triaging and prioritizing what needs to be seen. And I will see a range of things. So from your cute puppies coming in for their first vaccinations to your animal that's just been hit by a car and has a broken leg to another animal that swallowed something they shouldn't have and needs an operation. And so I'll spend the morning doing what's called consulting, so dealing with the stuff mainly medically. And that goes for a couple hours till mid-morning. Mid-morning I'll change into surgery, so I'll change and do surgery, and then hopefully have a lunch hour. And once I have a lunch hour, I'll come back, monitor the patients that have been having surgery, and usually they're in the care of our nurses, and so I'll check how they've been. Once they're all right, I'll go back to consulting for the rest of the day.
It sounds incredibly varied, whether it's the species you're working with or the type of role you're performing as surgery or consultancy.
Absolutely. And so it's incredibly varied. Like you say, species is varied. You can one minute be with a rabbit, the next minute you'll be with a Rottweiler. It changes. What you're doing, so from doing medical stuff to then moving on to surgical stuff, and then also the range of emotions that you're going to have on any given day. You have some people coming in really happy with their new kitten and just wanting some information and guidance, and you're doing that, to some people who are very distraught because they're at the end of the journey with their beloved one, or someone who thinks their animal's seriously hurt, and you have to then step in and try to help that animal. And so it is incredibly varied, and there is no 2 days that are the same. There is no Groundhog Day in veterinary medicine. It really, every day is very different, and you just have to be prepared to be flexible, adaptable, and just work with what you've got on any given day. I think my favorite aspect of the work, and I think that has evolved as I have kind of gained more experience, but my favorite aspect is really dealing with my clients. So you have people coming in and they need my help to fix their animals or to support their animals' growth or well-being. And so my favorite aspect is really trying to communicate with them and making sure that they get the information that I want to give them, or they get the knowledge that I want to give them. It can sometimes be a challenge because I have to advocate for their pets, and I have to be able to communicate the knowledge that I have in a way that is understandable to an owner, so that they know that I have the welfare of their pet at heart. And so that can sometimes be challenging. But for me, the best part of the day is being able to talk someone through either a problem, or to give them some information that they didn't have, or to help them in terms of decision making. And that for me is best. Their animals are the almost the vessel through which I get to do that. And that for me is lovely. I love cuddling kittens and puppies and fixing animals, and I love doing surgery. I love all of that stuff. But if I had to kind of rank them, I think for me the top would be dealing with the people who love the animals.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that sort of advocating role, so speaking on behalf of animals and making sure people understand how best to look after their pet.
Yeah, and I think that's really key, because I think that's where my expertise lies. I know in terms of animal diseases and animal injuries, what the next steps are going to look like. And to an owner who is very scared and maybe doesn't know that information, it is my job to make sure that I can give that information across in a way that they can understand what I mean. And that's really important, because if I can't do that, then they may not make the best decision for their animal, because they don't have the information. They don't have it. They didn't understand it. You can't fill it with jargon and medical speak, because that's not a way that's going to be understandable to every owner. So I have to be really very mindful when I speak in terms of putting the welfare of the animal top of my list, and making sure that when I speak, I am advocating on behalf of that animal's welfare and health.
It sounds such an exciting job. I'm sure there are going to be many people watching this thinking, how can I become a vet? What's the pathway? What would you say to young people listening?
Yeah, I'd say it depends on where in your journey you are. It's never too late to become a vet, and I would say what you need to make sure you do and love is, one, you love animals, and you're not afraid of being with them and interacting with them. I've specialized in companion animals, but that is not the only thing you can specialize in. So you could do horses, you could do cattle, you could do fish, you could do poultry, you could do anything you want. It really, the sky is the limit. But it is very much that you have to be exposed to all of those animals in your time at vet school. So you have to be okay with those animals. On top of that, you have to be okay with people. And I think that's the thing that I often want to say to young people wanting to do the career. It's not just about the animals, it's also about the people. And you have to be okay with, having conversations and interacting with people and really developing those communication skills. Because those are really, really important. In terms of the pathway, if you're kind of in the journey, generally one would tend to want to favour sciences, I think, or at least one of the sciences at school. So by A level, you'd want to at least have one of the sciences. And then there are quite a few universities that offer the degree. They vary in the delivery of it. So some are very kind of structured in the way of you do kind of theoretical work for a few years, and then you do more practical work. So it's kind of favoured heavily on theoretical work in the beginning, little practical, and then it kind of swaps around. There's some that start from practical from day one. So those are the things that one would want to consider before they do a degree, in terms of knowing the kind of individual you are, how best you work, and in terms of knowing what would help you learn best. So if you're more a practically based person, you'd want to favour one of the degrees that you'd learn practically. If you're someone who kind of favours theoretical work, then you'd want to favour one of those degrees instead.
Fantastic, thank you. So let's talk about your role as president. It's an incredible achievement, and it's a year-long term. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's roughly a year. It's not to the date or second, but it's roughly a year. And yes, I could maintain the role until the year.
Is the role? What does it involve?
So the president. Okay, so the council is the easiest way to describe it, I think, is like a non-executive. It's a board, and the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons has the role to uphold, advance vet animal health and welfare, and they do that through regulation. So one is that they regulate individual vets. So it's our version of the GMC, I think, the General Medical Council. It's the people who give the vets their professional code of conduct, so how they behave, and they will regulate them against that code of conduct. We also have very uniquely something called, we're a Royal College that regulates. So So the GMC is one bit, but you have for the medics, they have their Royal College of Pediatrics or Royal College of. So we're also a Royal College who do things like try to enhance bits of our profession through Mind Matters initiatives and through diversity kind of initiatives. And so trying to we have a mixed role in terms of supporting the profession, but also regulating the professionals. We also regulate the vet schools. So all vet schools to have an accredited degree, you have to be regulated by the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons. So we regulate vet schools as well. So that's what the organisation does. The council kind of oversees all of that. So the council has committees and different working groups and stuff that deal with all of that, apart from the regulation, which has been delegated to another body. So the council oversees all of that stuff, and I'm the president of the council. I don't know if I made that more complicated.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So
you're overseeing the body that helps to set and regulate professional standards.
You've made that sound so much easier. Yes.
But it's great to hear the structure and how that all works.
Yes. Yeah.
What do you see as your mission as the role of the president of the college? What would you like to see changed or affected at the end of your term?
Thank you. So in terms of my mission, I think it's I think that the one thing I can do and the one thing that I will do is to bring all of myself to the role. I think it's a in a time of a pandemic, one has to be very mindful of being too ambitious, I think, with priorities. But my priorities for the year, I've got three. One is diversity. I think it's something that I'm very passionate about. I, grew up in a place where to be a vet was considered normal for somebody who looked like me. And I have never had any real barriers or any real voices of doubt to my ambitions. And so to get back to the UK and find that people who maybe wanted to do this found lots of voices of doubt and lots of people not encouraging them along their journey, to me was very troubling. And so I'm in a position where I can use this platform to try to encourage people and just say there are people who look like you who can do this. And so if it's something that you would like to do, then please do it. Part of the work that we're doing at the Royal College, we have a diversity and inclusion group which has just launched its action plan, which is kind of sixfold, and to kind of address things like recruitment and retention in vet schools and in the profession, and also to try to ensure a culture change in our profession as well. So that's definitely one of my priorities, and to kind of see that gain legs to me has been very encouraging. I'm very clear too that this is not a journey that I will complete. It's with everything. I think when you're trying to make a big change, I have to be very aware that I am doing my bit of the relay, so to speak. And I hopefully will cover good ground, but I cannot see it all the way through. But when I finish, I will hopefully hand on that baton to somebody who is willing to keep that momentum going. And over time, we will see the change that we desire to see. So that's certainly one of the priorities. Another priority is obviously we've just gone through the end of our transition period from the European Union and European Union membership. And one of the things I really wanted to make sure in my time was that we did not lose our European colleagues because they felt that they were no longer welcome, or the profession was no longer welcoming. And I think one of the things that we saw after the referendum was that there was an increase in hate crimes and reported hate crimes to people from kind of European Union. And I really felt that, for one thing, regardless of what's going on in your environment, hopefully people would have felt supported and welcomed by our profession. So really one of my aims is to make sure that we keep in touch with our European colleagues over the time and make sure that they feel that they they can remain here. It's really important to know, I think, that half of all veterinary surgeons registering in the UK every year come from the European Union, and our profession relies very heavily on our European colleagues to maintain animal health and welfare in the United Kingdom. So that's really important.
It's incredible to hear that parallel, perhaps with our National Health Service, that we're very reliant on people that come from overseas to support, or
Absolutely.
who are less than the general population.
Absolutely. And I think that's really important, because I think, sometimes people have a very James Herriot idea of what the vet is. So it's the what they see on TV, and that's not the reality of what it looks like on the ground. What it looks like on the ground to get every animal vaccinated and every animal treated in an emergency is that we will, and every kind of export health certificate. So when food has to be exported from this country, what that looks like is it relies very heavily, more than likely that person is going to be from the European Union. So we really have to make sure that those vets feel welcomed here, and they feel like they have a place in our community. So that's my two priorities. And the third priority is bringing some recognition to the role of the general practitioner. So we call our vets who are GP vets, so that they're not GPs as doctors, but they're GPs as their general practitioners. They can do a bit of everything without particular specialty in one area or one subject, and they can be advanced practitioners, but they tend to just remain general practitioners. And so that's why before, when we were talking about specialization, I was like, we're not going to use the word specialized, because general practitioners are very much the heart and kind of the heart of the profession. They're the people that see the dog that's just been hit. They're the people that see, your brand new puppy and tell you how to keep him or her protected. And we have had a move fairly recently in our profession to try to of a new generation of vets wanting to specialize, to be something, to do surgery, or to become a specialist in neurology, or to become a specialist in orthopedics, or choose a lane and go down that lane. And that's good, but I don't know if that's because we don't have we haven't we haven't highlighted the role of, just having a moment there. I don't know, we haven't highlighted the role of that general practitioner, and how important that is to everybody, how important that is to families, how important that is to the majority of our population, and their animals, and the welfare and health of those animals. And so again, one of my priorities to try to address this year is that we can at least formulate some sort of plan in how we're going to do that, and allow vets who are doing this job to realize that there is something to be proud of, and to allow the next generation of vets seeing the general practitioner vet to realize there is something valuable in that. There is something in that I should consider, and it to be great, it doesn't just mean you need to specialize. You can be great by being a general practitioner as well. So those are my three priorities for the year.
Very ambitious. It's a great coverage there to really sort of bring change. And you mentioned perhaps a culture change. And I'm wondering if you could say a bit more in terms of diversity, whether it feels that there is a culture at the moment within practice that does create a barrier to wider participation.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, and certainly we have some information from some recent some recent data that's been gathered, and I think we know that a lot of a significant proportion of vets experience racism and sexism and all of the other isms whilst they're at work. We know that a significant proportion, a higher proportion in terms of, if we're talking specifically about race, we know that that's affecting our colleagues quite significantly compared to the other to other biases, and because we're such a small a small proportion of the profession, we have a disproportionately larger, we're being affected disproportionately by a disproportionately larger amount. So certainly we know that exists. In terms of tackling that, we have to try to figure out why it's happening, why it's allowed to keep happening, and what we're going to do in terms of sanctioning that kind of behaviour.
Is the experience of racism, is it coming from within the field, from other veterinary practitioners, or also within the clientele that you're working with?
Yeah, so the British Veterinary Association did a survey, and I think what came through from that is the majority of prejudice and racism that's being experienced is from colleagues, not from clients. So there's some proportion from clients, but I think I don't have the data with me, but it was certainly significantly more in terms of senior colleagues, junior colleagues, and colleagues at your same level. That's where it really was being experienced. And I think, we have to be able to address that. And as the Royal College, we set that tone in terms of professional conduct. And the tone, we can leave the tone very general in terms of the equal opportunities policy, and it says that you should treat people equally, and that's it final, and that should be broad enough to cover everything. However, what we're identifying is that people are not considering these things when they're making comments, or they're treating people in a way that's unfair or prejudicial. And so we have to be able to interrogate that information a little bit more and set some stuff up that's at a more granular level, so that we're telling you exactly what is not acceptable and exactly what is acceptable. And so that then sets the tone of your professional conduct. Now, we regulate individuals and we regulate their professional conduct, so we will be able to then, if you're not following that, there then can be sanctions and things towards that. So.
Has racism been part of your experience as working as a vet?
So I can't say that I have experienced what we say overt racism. So I can't say that I've had anybody call me any names that have been racist. I have had no clients not see me because of the color of my skin. I've not had that in terms of experience. I think what I've had, and this then goes back to that whole idea of colleagues as opposed to clients, is that I've had people almost address me a little bit differently, or say things a little bit differently because they felt or because they just didn't think. So I would certainly say I've had experiences in that way. And if I can give you a bit of an example, I remember once being, a couple of examples. I remember once being in a prep room, and we were talking about, we were just preparing to do our surgeries, and people often read jokes from their phone, and someone came up with this joke about a dog being born in a barn is not a cow, and the joke was then referring to someone's ethnicity. It wasn't someone black, but it was another ethnic minority. And I remember my boss being in the room at the time and laughing, and the junior kind of people being in the room and laughing as well. And I remember saying afterwards to him, like, you are setting, people were looking to you to see how you responded in that moment. And that's racist. And you're telling them that it's okay to be racist, and that's not okay. And so even though that wasn't directed personally at me, I perceive anything that's kind of being racist towards any ethnic minority as being racist, and really feel intolerant of that kind of behavior in practice. And the same said boss, everyone used to bake cakes and bring it in to work. And I decided one day to bake my world famous chocolate cake that came from, Betty Crocker, but I used to add my own little bits into it. And so I brought my chocolate cake into work that I baked for everyone, and he asked if it was laced with marijuana, which I remember being, because I was relatively newly graduated, I wanted to be just like everybody else, do something like everybody else was doing. And he asked me in front of all my colleagues, and I remember thinking, like, that that's racist. Like, that is so racist. It's not even like funny. And then he was just like, oh, well, I was just making a joke. And I when you're young in your profession, it's really hard sometimes to say in front of everyone, like, that's not behavior that I will tolerate. So I remember just being like, no, it's not, and feeling really bad that, well, people now take a slice of my cake thinking it's laced with marijuana and thinking, why would he even think that? And so I remember that certainly being an experience for me in my in my early years. But I can certainly say, I think as I have grown in our profession, I have realized things that, and I think maybe in the way that I carry myself, people just don't make the kind of jokes to me that they probably thought would have been funny. I think maybe when I was younger, I maybe carried off a very naive or young or immature, I don't know, but it certainly hasn't been my experience of late.
And it seems it's important to acknowledge that covert racism is just as damaging as overt, and
Absolutely.
racism isn't about name calling, it's about that sense of us being less than, and that sort of palpable hostility.
Absolutely.
We're coming towards the end of our time, and I wanted to leave space to talk about what you enjoy about nature and the natural world in your personal time. How do you like to engage and connect?
Yeah, so we have our woods nearby our house, which is not very far to get to. I can get to it in a few minutes. So I often go on a daily basis for a walk through the woods, and regardless of what the weather is like, whether it's kind of rainy or really cold or summery, I just really like getting into nature. I like being around a space where there are no houses and there's no noise in terms of kind of cars and things. I can just hear the birds, and I really think the bird song is something that has been very therapeutic for me. I think part of my role as president can often be very challenging and very demanding, and I think in this space where we're working from home, there is no decompression time. There's no kind of, after the meeting, everybody gets together and has a coffee and talks about what happened. It kind of, you put your laptop down and that's it, the meeting's over. And it's often nice for me to then leave and go into that space and hear the birds and kind of think to myself, it's bigger than I am. Like, this is about more than just me in this moment. And I really enjoy that. I think it's been very therapeutic for me. So.
Beautiful. Well, it's been really inspiring to talk with you and to hear about the work you're doing and your journey. If there are people watching that would like to know more about the profession, what do they do? Are there resources they can go to?
Yeah, so I think I can certainly get those for you, probably better than I know at top of my head. But the RCVS, you can go to their website, the British Veterinary Association, you can go to their website. There's an organisation called BVED, so British Veterinary Ethnic Diversity Society, and they have quite a lot of information for young people from ethnic minorities wanting to become vets, and they can signpost you to a lot of resources as well that are available, so that's a really good resource as well. And so, yeah, those are all available. Certainly, if anybody wants to contact me on social media, that's absolutely fine as well.
What's your handle on social media?
So I'm Mandisa Greene everywhere, so on LinkedIn, Facebook and Twitter. I'm at RCVS President on Twitter as well, and I'm at Dr. Mandisa the Vet on Instagram.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for your time today. Really enjoyed listening. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.